Have you ever thought, there's got to be a better and simple way to learn organizational strategies? 5 Minutes Learning has a global and diverse collection of case studies to help management students. Click the subscribe button and hit the bell icon to stay updated with our upcoming and interesting case studies. Throughout history, women have successfully breastfed their children. It has only been a century since modern technology enabled women to feed manufactured infant formula to their babies. Formula feeding began in developed countries and quickly spread to the Third World. When formula feeding is used incorrectly, it directly increases infant mortality and morbidity rates in developing countries. Through promotional campaigns, multinational corporations have made it more difficult to control the use of this potentially dangerous product. The infant formula industry, which makes healthy profits in the Third World, has resisted outside attempts to control the promotion of its product. The problem of infant formula was brought to light by concerned citizens in the Third World. As a result, the World Health Organization Code of Breast Milk Substitute Marketing Guidelines was created. The effectiveness of this code is severely limited by controversy over ambiguous provisions. This disagreement has not been settled. As long as such legislation does not exist, the consequences of product misuse will continue to plague developing countries. Infant formula MNCs spend their money on marketing and advertising strategies that tempt mothers away from breastfeeding and toward breast milk substitutes. These strategies encourage lactating mothers to use formula instead of breast milk. During her hospital stay, the medical staff recommends formula feeding for the mother. In addition, manufacturers sell infant formula by donating free supplies to hospitals, which encourages mothers to choose bottle feeding over breastfeeding. Many hospitals routinely separate mother and child at birth and administer newborn formula, which manufacturers supply to the institution at no or low cost. From the initial feeding, the infant and mother are introduced to the bottle. As a result, the hospital creates the illusion that doctors prefer formula and that milk substitutes are necessary to maintain healthy infants. Offering free samples is not only psychologically effective for the mother, but it can also cause the baby to become physiologically dependent on formula. Furthermore, marketing techniques aimed at gaining the confidence and support of healthcare systems have led doctors in the Third World to support this shift away from breastfeeding. Formula must be carefully marketed in developing countries due to the many dangers involved. It'll make sure moms are aware of the dangers of using it and can make informed decisions. In the past years, Nestlé's promotional practices have been problematic. Nestlé's mass advertising campaigns to market formulas in developing nations sparked controversy in 1968. Through billboard ads and pictorials, Nestlé made people think infant formula was safe and easy to use in the Third World. The United Nations became aware of the problem with infant formula advertising in 1970. The UN Protein Calorie Advisory Group warned that poverty, unsanitary conditions, and illiteracy could lead to the misuse of infant formula. The PAG recommended careful regulation and supervision of the marketing and use of breast milk substitutes. Until 1974, infant formula marketing remained unregulated, despite a clear link between misleading formula promotions and infant mortality. Additionally, the WHO urged member nations to review infant formula marketing and introduce restrictive advertising codes. While Nestlé denied any marketing malpractice, the industry was worried. An international boycott of Nestlé was initiated in 1977 after Nestlé's marketing practices were repeatedly ignored by active consumer groups. They urged people everywhere to boycott Nestlé products until the company stopped promoting infant formula. It includes all direct advertising to consumers, free samples, milk nurses, and health workers promoting the product. Nestle announced in 1978 that it was planning to stop advertising infant formula in the mass media. As a means of resolving the conflict, industry representatives requested a World Health Organization meeting. In collaboration with the United Nations Children's Fund and WHO, the UN organized and sponsored an international forum on infant health and breast milk substitutes. To control the inappropriate marketing practices of infant formula suppliers, a regulatory code was needed. After rejecting 4 drafts, the World Health Assembly considered the final version. It was adopted as a recommendation by the 34th World Health Assembly on May 21, 1981. There's one big problem with the WHO code: it's only a recommendation. It's not legally enforceable or binding. Due to the fact that WHO recommendations don't have any legal force without ratification by individual countries, affected governments have been urged to implement legislation, adopting the international code. Another problem with the code is its inherent ambiguity. In addition, the code allowed free supplies to be given to institutions, and whether hospitals were considered institutions became a controversy. As a result of these discrepancies, the WHO launched an international effort to clarify these terms. According to Nestle, since the code was a recommendation for governments, the industry wasn't obligated to enforce it. In spite of that, Nestle promised to support the objectives of the code while doing its part to interpret its ambiguous terms. Nestle says the code shouldn't restrict specific industry behavior. In response to alleged marketing violations in the Third World, Nestle formed the Nestle Infant Formula Commission. In compliance with the code, Nestle redesigned infant formula labels and got rid of old marketing materials. Nestle released reports reassuring the public that its code specs were followed. Since NIFAC relies completely on Nestle for funding, critics questioned the Commission's objectivity, despite the chair's assurances. Rather than reveal the company's flaws, the public saw the Commission as a public relations tool. The boycott cost Nestle a lot of money and forced the company to take firmer steps towards resolving the issues. The company agreed to work with UNICEF to develop and test upcoming educational materials and labels that incorporate the code. In addition, it agreed to limit gifts for health workers to inexpensive utility items. Nestle couldn't resolve the controversy over article, despite their best efforts. Nestle finally promised in 1984 that it would make supplies free or low cost only for those mothers who needed to bottle feed their babies. Nestle would use its own definition of need until WHO or UNICEF clarified it. The 7-year boycott against Nestle officially ended in 1984, with Nestle and the NGOs declaring a truce after the Nestle and UNICEF clarification conferences. Nestle specifically said the company would not engage in advertising or give free samples to mothers. Nestle assured the NGOs that it would include statements with its products declaring the superiority of breastfeeding. Finally, Nestle promised to make educational materials for doctors to use with patients. Although all parties hailed this agreement as a success, NGOs and WHO representatives continued to disagree with Nestle. The misuse of infant formula in developing countries has led to the death of millions of babies and slowed down their social and economic development. Using infant formula improperly is a human-made problem, because modern infant feeding innovations have been pushed too quickly onto nations that aren't ready. Despite more than 20 years of controversy, the infant formula problem reminds industrialized nations that product safety depends directly on where the product is used. To combat the dangers inherent in this product, Third world governments need to take an effective stand against MNCs. If multinationals don't follow the rules, they'll be threatened with serious penalties. By enforcing an effective code, third world babies will have the best chance of being breastfed. Thank you so much for listening to this video. Do not forget to subscribe this YouTube channel for receiving updates about my upcoming case study videos.